Well, hello. Well. How can I help you? Are you delivering something? I don't see any papers. Looks like the milk's already been dropped off today. Do you have a package for me, perhaps? No, you're here to sell something. Well, you're free to give it a try. I can be easily persuaded, you know. Am I Mrs. Smith? Yes, of course I'm Mrs. Smith. Otherwise, why would I be in my home right now? Yes, of course. I'm Mrs. Smith. I do apologize if I look a little disheveled. I was still getting myself all dolled up for today. It's not like I was struggling with a certain Mrs. Smith who would not behave. No, anyway, is my husband home? Oh, if only I had a husband. No. Mr. Smith is out at work, of course, going to the firm to do his thing, whatever men do at work. If only we could get into their offices and find out. But the security is just so tough. I'm sorry, you shouldn't mind me. I've had quite a morning. I had, a little bit of a struggle, as you can tell from my disheveled state. No, not with a person, not with locking a person in the basement. No. With the new dishwasher, it's the newest thing. I got it from Sears, but boy, is it something else. But you said you were here to sell something, didn't you? Well, just by looking at you, I think I'm very interested in what you might be offering. Oh, yes, you have some Avon and some Tupperware. Oh, well, that's lovely. Last Tupperware party I went to didn't turn out so well. I was ready to drop a lot of money. Don't mind the neighbors. Yes, they've been doing construction on their home for quite some time, and it was an empty house for quite a few months, which was a perfect place to hide out in and watch the neighborhood. If someone wanted to do something bizarre like that. But no, they've been now doing construction all day, all night. It's so loud. And they just don't let anyone stay in the house while they're doing it. Anyway, like I was saying, I did go to a Tupperware party not too long ago, and I was willing to spend quite some money, or at least some green stamps, to purchase some wonderful Tupperware for my home, which is here in this house, obviously. Otherwise, why would I be opening the door? But anyway, but they made a big fuss and they kicked me out. Apparently, I wasn't actually invited, supposedly, and apparently there's like a neighborhood watch to keep me away from people's husbands and wives. And anyway, I'm rambling again. You must excuse me. Like I said, I've had a very hectic morning. Yeah, of course, turning down the sheets, dusting the blinds, making breakfast for my husband, of course, making him some coffee. Speaking of, would you like to come in? You look thirsty. You look very thirsty. Even more thirsty than me, if that's possible. But I'd be happy to have you come on in. It's a very hot day out. Maybe a nice cold glass of lemonade. Or I do still have some coffee, or at least I think there's some coffee left on the stove. I would be so happy to invite you inside. You must work so hard. You look like a very hard worker. Look at those arms. Ooh. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not very becoming of me, a married woman, to be touching you like that, is it? it just makes you uncomfortable. Well, you are very strange indeed. Personally, I love being touched. You're welcome to. No, you think that's inappropriate? Well, you're right. We do need to have morals in this day and age and society, and with all this new rock and roll coming in and rebellious teenagers. I mean, it's up to us to keep things in line. Although, what's so wrong about being a little rebellious every now and then? I mean, have you seen that Elvis? The way he moves his hips. Well, it's very enticing indeed. But are you sure you won't come in? No, it's not appropriate. You and your rules. Well, all right. Why don't you show me what you're selling? Okay. It's a very lovely looking blush. Maybe I could try it on? Do you have any samples? You do. You know, I'm not very good at applying makeup. Maybe you could put some on for me? Oh, no need for a brush. You can just use your fingers. No. Okay, well, that's fine. I'll take some samples. You know, you are very convincing. I see you have some lotion there as well. Oh, I could always use more creams. Of course, I do have this body butter that's very moisturizing. But I'm very willing to see what you have. Or if you'd like, I can show you a little bit about this cream that I use. I'd be really happy to apply some for you. Looks like you're getting a little bit of redness around your eyes. Being out in the sun all day, you poor thing. No, well, you're right, of course. I should be looking at your products and not showing you my own. She really does have nice stuff. I mean, Mrs. Smith, have nice things. Oh, how long have I been married? That's a good question. I should do more research. I would say just a few years, most likely just a few years. Oh, where's my wedding ring? Well, you see, I like to clean it. Yes, I like to clean it, and I send it to the cleaners. Oh, you have a product for cleaning jewelry? Of course, I'd love to see that. You know, you have a really lovely voice. It's very soothing and enticing, and gosh, I could listen to you sell me things all day. Oh, yes. I would love it if you became a regular here. If you came maybe every day. Well, during the day, of course, before Mr. Smith, my husband, gets home. Oh, yes, Mr. Smith is a very handsome man. I mean, I wouldn't be here if he wasn't. Although he's a little bit finicky and, likes to say things like, I would never cheat on my wife, and also, who are you? And you seem crazy, and I'll have to call the police. He says that about other women, of course. I'm his wife, and, apparently there's some woman that's stalking him or something. I wouldn't know anything about that. No, of course not. But yeah, he likes to play hard to get. I mean, he rejects the stalker for some reason. And I do like him. I mean, love him very much. But, it's always good to have options. And you are quite a lovely option. It's such a shame I can't convince you to come in, but you're adamant that it wouldn't be appropriate. Me as a married woman. I mean, if I were to tell you I wasn't married, would that make a difference? Oh, I'm just not your type. Well, no, I'm not offended at all. But I should tell you, just as you are a very, very convincing salesperson, I'm very convincing too, and very persuasive. Are you certain I couldn't persuade you? No, 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 you don't need to leave. Forget about that. I'm happy to purchase some items from you. I just don't know where she keeps her money, or the money. I mean, I don't know where my husband, Mr. Smith, keeps the money, but show me more. I'm sure I can find something. Oh, that is a very wonderful cast iron skillet. You do such a good job of holding it up. You and your strong arms. You're quite fit, you know. I don't work out much myself. I just try to stay trim by, using some wonderful dieting tips and food portion tips that I found in a recent newspaper. Yeah, something about the type of lard or grease you use. You have to cut it in half or something. I don't know. I don't do as much cooking as I'd like to. Well, every time I make a beautiful roast or even a pie or cherry cake, something wonderful like that, and I bring it to my beloved, my husband, of course, they just never seem grateful. Oftentimes they don't even try it. They just say, I don't know who you are. Why are you bringing me food? And that breaks my heart, because how could they not know me when I've dedicated years to becoming invested in their lives? Yes, sorry, that might sound a little strange. I'm talking about a charity that I run. Yes, it's something like a food drive. Yes, and the people we deal with, they're not quite all there. So they pretend like they don't know me, even though I've been following them for years. Supporting them, not following them. You'll have to excuse me, it's this darn heat that is just making me trip over my words. Well, the heat and also your gorgeous face. I know I've already asked a few times, but are you quite sure I can't entice you to come in? I mean, you just look so warm, and we have a very nice fridge. It even has a freezer where we can keep ice. Impressive, isn't it? Well, this is quite a modern household, or so I've observed. Do you see that? All that construction going on. I do apologize. It's just so very loud. But what are you going to do? I guess that's part of living in an upper-class neighborhood. Not that I would know. I mean, of course, I know, because I've lived here since I moved in with my husband after we got married. Of course. But like I was saying, Mr. Smith won't be home for hours. I'm certain of it. I know his schedule very well. It's been years that we've been married, of course. I'm sorry, one moment. You stop, you're struggling, or I'm going to tie those ropes tighter, okay? What's that? You thought you heard someone? No, no, no. You must be hearing things. Someone calling for help. Aren't you silly? It sounded like the real Mrs. Smith. I'm sorry. You are... The heat is really getting to your mind. I am the real Mrs. Smith, of course. I mean, you've never come here before, right? Yeah. I was just asking because if you had, I was just going to say that I recently got my hair done, so I might not look the same as the Mrs. Smith you're used to. But seeing as you've never met the real Mrs. Smith, I mean, you've never met me, the real Mrs. Smith, you have no reason to think that any muffled shouting you hear down there, down the stairs in the basement, that it means anything, or that it is anything. No, sweetheart, you are just so confused. But no worries. I can tell that you're suffering from mild heat stroke. And I was a nurse once. Well, I worked in a hospital. Well, worked is a strong word. I stayed in a hospital, or I snuck into a hospital. It's complicated. The point is that I would be so happy to nurse you back to health. You could just come on in, lie down on our little settee. I could get you a cold cloth, a nice compress, put right on your pretty little forehead. I mean, you definitely need to rest. You seem like such a hard worker. And all that work will just burn you out. You seem like you need to have a little fun, don't you think? No? Well, I must insist that you come in because I don't want to be held responsible if I'm making you uncomfortable. Sweetheart, I make people the most comfortable. I've never made anyone feel awkward or uncomfortable before. Of course not. Why don't you just come in? I've got some wonderful, wonderful lemonade. Fresh made. I made it myself. Well, Mrs. Smith made it, and it looks very delicious. Very sweet. Come on in, darling. Why are you backing away? No. There is no need to panic or to alert any authorities. No, there's nothing wrong here. Darling, don't run off. I want to buy your pots and pans and your makeup. Oh, they're gone. This is all your fault, Mrs. Smith. I don't see why you can't just be quiet. I mean, is it bad enough you won't let me have your husband, that you refuse that? You couldn't let me have the salesperson either? So selfish. Oh well. We still do have that bread delivery coming in an hour, don't we? We'll just have to see what happens then.